studio with us is author Jim Merkel. His book, The Making of an Icon. The dreamers, the schemers, and the hard hats who built the Gateway Arch. Jim, very timely for you to be here with the opening of the new grounds. The arch is still the same, but everything around it has changed.
Oh, it makes something that's already perfect so much better. So wonderful. You know, like I said in my book, that St. Louis has done so many things wrong, but this is one thing that St. Louis has done right. And I am so excited to see the changes. It's so beautiful. This is a perfect time. In fact, we sort of scheduled it to come out at this time.
I figured that it might have something to do with this. Jim, this is the second edition of your book.
Right.
When did the first edition come out?
It came out in 2014, and I really thought it was a great book then. The Post-Dispatch put it on its list of the 14 best books of 14. But it really wasn't done. We knew that there were going to be some things coming out. We knew that there were going to be some people lassoing down the arch just to look at what those things were that were wrong, what that dirt was. We knew that they were going to really make some incredible changes. At the time, I was a little bit cynical. I thought, they made some changes. Like St. Louis, it probably won't work out. But it did.
Yeah. It was, 3 years, 3+ years, $350 million. It is really something special. I want to step back and start from the beginning. Talk a little bit about the man, the genius, as you refer to him, Saarinen, who designed the arch.
Saarinen was the son of a great Finnish architect, Elio Saarinen, who came here in the early 20s. He was sort of like, he was raised among very brilliant artists. He spent a year studying sculpture in Paris. He went on to graduate from Yale in architecture. He was busting. He'd done some great things, but he was busting to do something wonderful. And when this competition came for the best idea for basically a flat land, he came forward with a brilliant project, and he spent 14 years working on it, and unfortunately he died of a brain tumor in '61 before it was built.
What were some of the other options that had been proffered?
Well, they talked about a lot of things were pretty mediocre. They had a lot of spires sticking up in the air, or other things.
We have that. It's called the Washington Monument.
Well, yeah. And what Saarinen said was, he looked at it carefully and he said, neither an obelisk nor a rectangular box nor a dome seemed right on this site or for this purpose. But here at the edge of the Mississippi River, a great arch did seem right. Yeah. I talked to a guy who had been a student at Washington University, just doing, intern work, and he said he looked at it. When he just opened it up just to put it up, he knew that was the one.
Right. I mean, it seems so perfect now. It seems so obvious now, but we've had it for, 35, 50 years?
Yes.
And so we're used to it. But it probably didn't seem so perfect at the time. You had to kind of get the idea and say, yeah, this is it.
Well, yes, and what he worked with was a catenary curve, and right here, for those people who can see it, for those who can't. On television, you have right here, I've got a chain. They call it a catenary curve because catenna means chain. And that's, if you pull it upside down, you get a catenary curve arch. However, he worked for 14 years on this, and he came up with, what if each one of the links was different? What if it was the one, when you're holding it closest to your hand, it's closest to your hand, it's the fattest, it's the biggest, and then it just slowly goes down to very narrow. And in fact, at the arch, you have 54 feet at the bottom. Imagine that's where you're holding your hands, and it goes down to 17 feet right at the top of the arch. And so that would be in the middle. That is basically, Saarinen said, that's about as close, that's really close to what we were imagining. And when you think about it, it makes the top of the arch flatter, and it also makes it look like it's higher than it is. The whole thing, like a sculpture, he imagined it that way, and it's actually you're better off just looking at it from the ground. It's fun to go up, but if you really want to appreciate what he did, look at it from the ground and stare at it.
I remember coming through here as a kid. My grandparents lived in Union, Missouri, so we'd come back, and as we'd cross over the Mississippi River, we'd stop at the arch. And I remember doing just that, laying on the ground and looking up.
Oh, yeah.
And just in awe of what it is. Give us some facts, Jim Merkel, kind of the things that we sometimes know but forget. I mean, so much went into this, so much material, so many workers. Talk a little bit about that.
886 tons of stainless steel. And for those who have this is what it is. I'm holding up a stainless steel
pot.
A pot. And
stainless steel.
Right, 886. Of course, the big thing and that they show in the movie Down at the Arch is that it's they thought that 11 people were going to die. And why not? Because they didn't hold them up with anything. They were just walking around free. And if you slip, you fall. And there's a lot of wonderful pictures of in my book of just that right here.
And that's one of the great things about this book. Some fantastic, not only black and white pictures, but superb color photographs.
Oh, I was so excited to see those.
Yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful. And what was really wonderful for me was to meet some of the people, to meet the guy who was the chief engineer, who was in charge of the construction. He's in his 80s. His name is Ken Kolpmeyer, and he said he'd go into a bar. And somebody would come up to him, and he'd cross his arms like, hi, it's not going to meet. You're going to be a fool. But he knew, he was confident, and he was.
Yeah. I always wondered about that because we always hear the stories of the railroad coming in not quite matching up. A little easier to fix than a big arch.
Oh, sure.
Was it exactly online, or did they have to hit it with a hammer a little bit?
A little bit, but when they got up. And they also had to push it out a little bit when it came to the top, and so that they could stick in the last piece, and then it came in, which really gives it, there's so much tension throughout the whole thing. One of the things you get with a catenary curve is that all of the tension goes right into the ground. It doesn't go out or whatever. It's so hard for me to come up with new superlatives like, great, this is going to be here 1,000 years from now. And
do you think so? I mean, is it built that well?
It's built that well. I don't know. Maybe it'll only do 500 years.
I mean,
but
you do 500, 1,000. Who's counting?
And so all of it is the greatest thing that St. Louis has going for it. And if anybody hasn't been down there lately, they sure ought to do it now.
Yeah, now's the time. Are the stories of what was going on at the time, you talk about those. Maybe share one of those stories about the people that were working on this arch.
Well, here's one that when they were working on this arch, and I'll ask you, what was the most important bit of equipment that somebody working on the arch had to have?
I would imagine a wrench. Aren't there a lot of bolts in this thing?
Well, I'll give you a hint. After 2 hours, 2 or 3 or 4 hours, you can have a really good wrench, but like you might be crossing your feet. They had each side had a had an outhouse, and every once in a while they lowered it down to clean it out. But there were times when they forgot and they left it there too long, and so they lowered it down. And you better not be below that thing.
That's interesting. You don't even think about that, but yeah, you just don't come down from way up there to use the facilities. It's got to be up there with them.
Yeah, and well, I'll say this: it
was R&R Sanitation, probably,
right? Guggenheim, the guy who made that wonderful movie. I'm sure that'll be shown 1,000 years from now, if we're around. He talked about how he had problems keeping cameramen. Oh. It was fine when it was 50 and 100.
Sure.
But but he went up there, and other people went up there. Of course. There was the woman reporter for the Sue Ann Wood for the Globe Democrat, who really did some great pioneering things for women reporters, and she went up there to the top. There were so many. And then there was the guy who. Kept I can't think of his name. He ran he just pulled, the thing that pulled the things up.
Right.
He did it in a shack, and he didn't see it. And there was a guy up there who said, "Okay, move it up."
A little more.
And they got it. And he was one guy. He was there, and he got the last piece up when like on the last day, and he didn't see it.
Wow. Were there any marvels of engineering that were a part of the building of this arch, or was it generally accepted mechanical principles just applied in a different way?
Well, of course, it was built. One of the marvels of engineering was how to get people up to the top.
I guess so.
And there was a guy who, when it came very close to the time when they're going to start, they just had it penciled in elevator. You're going
bring people to the top. It's not. It's anybody that's ever ridden in it, how it shifts, and the first couple times you think, oh, it's broken, and you realize no, that's just a different way of having an elevator.
And actually, the way it was done was you're a little bit. You've caught it right here. There was. There's a fellow by the name of Dick Bowser who was asked to do this. He was given 2 weeks, and really he figured out. Wow, oops. Excuse me. Hey, if you hear anything, hold on to my chain. Don't rattle my chain. So his name was Dick Bowser, and he thought about it, and he thought, well, what do we do? What do we do? And then all of a sudden he thought of a Ferris wheel. And you pull up individual bits of capsules in a row, and every once in a while you move them, so they stay flat, and that's where you get the little
the shifting that scares the socks off of people the first couple times.
And but at the end, when he proposed this, he was very apologetic because because of the war, he hadn't gotten his engineering degree. And he says, I'm sorry, I don't. It said, we don't care if you don't have an engineering degree.
As long as it works. The book is The Making of an Icon, The Dreamers, the Schemers, and the Hard Hats Who Built the Gateway Arch. It's the second edition of the book by Jim Merkel. Jim, this book is really interesting, and it's so well done, and the pictures, like I said, really add to it. Where can people get this?
Well, you can get it where fine books are sold. You can get it on Amazon. If you go to jimmerkelthewriter.com, you can order an autographed copy.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
A great read. Get it and enjoy your trip to the Arch along with the book, The Making of an Icon. Jim Merkel, appreciate you being here today.
Well, thank you.
927 KTRS, The Big